is Emma Harris, and I'm here in Gavilan TV with some war veterans. They've come here to share their life and their experiences why they served our country. Gentlemen, would you each take time and introduce yourself, introduce your rank, introduce where you served, and so that our audience can get to know you better.
My name's Al Christensen. I was in the Marine Corps. I enlisted in 1948. Went through boot camp in San Diego. Got training in Camp Pendleton. Was an MP at Alameda Naval Air Station. Then served in Korea and was released from active duty in May of 1952. Released from the reserves in 1955. I was a sergeant at an artillery survey section, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ray Burleson. I served in Korea with Task Force 77, shore bombardment war in Wonsan Harbor, various other activities on that ship for the last 2 years of the war. And when the war was over in November of '53, I came home and was discharged on Christmas of that same year. I was a fireman first class. I served as a boiler tender, keep the ship moving, and was released to inactive duty at that time.
My name is Frank Geraci, and unlike these guys who enlisted, I was a draftee. They had to come and get me. And I took my basic training at Camp Roberts, California, shipped over, this was in 1951, January 1951. After basic, I shipped over, they put us on a boat, went to Japan, spent about 3 days there taking tests, put us back on the boat and shipped us to Korea. And they get off the boat in Korea and they start assigning a bunch of us to different outfits and putting them on trucks and taking them away. And at the end, there were about 30 of us still standing there, and they told us we were going to radio school. I said, well, I don't know anything about radio. They said, well, the test you took showed you had an aptitude, so you went. So spent 6 weeks in radio school, taking a 30-week course in 6 weeks. Took me and another fellow up to the 24th Reconnaissance Company, 24th Infantry Division, as radio operators, and we get up there and the company commander looks at us and says, we don't need radio operators. Typical service. Anyway, they put the other kid in the tank section, they put me in the scout section. The only radio I saw was on the first patrol we ran. The patrol leader looked at me and said, you want the radio school? I said, yeah. He said, here, carry this. So I got to carry a 39-pound radio. That was in June, that was in August of '51. I was wounded in November of '51, spent a month in the hospital in Japan, they shipped me home, spent 4 months in the hospital which is now Vandenberg, but it used to be Camp something or other. But anyway, and then I was discharged in 1952 in October, and I ended up, I made it all the way up to corporal. So I was with the 24th Recon Company and the 24th Infantry Division.
I'm Ron Javot. I was in the Navy, destroyer, tin can Navy. Had 2 tours of duty in Korea. Was there in August. Went through Incheon, Wonsan, and was up in Hungnam during and after the Chosin Reservoir. And I came home in January of '50. And I went back over in October of '51 for a second tour. And we did what most destroyers do, fired at targets, got fired at. And when I came home, I was discharged in San Jose, and I just stayed. I grew up in New Jersey. But when you're in the service, wherever you are is home, so it didn't make any difference to me.
My name is Andrew Navarro. I joined the service as a reserve at Moffett Field in 1947, December 10. And needless to say, it was shortly after the North Koreans invaded South Korea, we were some of the first units activated at Moffett Field for the 1st Marine Division. We left a month after that on, we were activated on 25 July. And we were 1, 2, 3, and we were in Camp Pendleton. I got to Camp Pendleton, we had plenty of shots, all of us. And when I got to Camp Pendleton, they just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, call out your name, 1, 2, 3. As soon as I call your name, you move over to this side. And before I knew it, I was an Amtrak driver, loader, the whole works in Amtrak's. But all of a sudden, I'm now in tanks. The closest I've ever seen a tank at that time was in the movies. But he says, well, what you did in civilian life qualifies you that you can break in working with tanks. Okay. So off we went to Kobe, Japan, Liberty Time, and we eventually loaded up and went and made the Incheon landing on 15 and 16 September 1950. And on our way through Thimphu into Seoul, Korea, got our business taken care of there, and we went back to the ships. We went around we used to call it the Horn, but anyway, South Korea in Busan, and landed in Wonsan. And who would I find there? I didn't find any shooting right at the moment, but Bob Hope was there, and so was Marilyn Maxwell. So off I went. Now I'm inside a hangar, a huge old North Korean hangar. And I went inside and I looked around like I really knew what the hell I was doing, but I really didn't. But I was still looking for McGuire. So after moving up and down, you're looking at faces, I decided, well, why not watch a show? I wasn't supposed to be there. So I squatted right close to them, and I'm sitting there, and everybody's laughing. I'm not laughing because I don't want to attract attention. But the bottom line is, when Marilyn Maxwell says, any of you guys want to dance? Bingo, I was the first one on top of the stage. Hey, if nobody jumps, I saw a bunch of old men like yours truly nowadays, you know, and I said, I know they're not going to be able to jump up there, you know, on the stage, but I was able to, so now I'm dancing. From there on, in October, we started traveling north to the so-called infamous Chosin Reservoir. And I went with my B Company 1st Tank Battalion up to as far as Coterie, about 12 miles south of Hagaru, and then Udamni and whatever was beyond that place. I don't know who. And after being there for a while, we got involved with the actual shooting to rescue some people and to keep our butts clean, you know. And then they told me, said, well, Navarro, I said, well, what's going to happen now? I said, I don't know. I said, you ask my captain. I was the company commander's tank driver, B-41, Captain Williams. And he said, Navarro, he said, your guess is as good as mine. We'll have to wait and see what Chesty Puller says about this. So we stayed right there, and eventually we headed back down towards Hagaru and back to Coterie and eventually to Hung Nam. Ham Hung and Hung Nam. One is the port, the other one's the town of Ham Hung. And from there on, they evacuated us there, and we went back to Busan. I forget the other little name that was attached to where we landed there. And eventually, in about March or so, I don't remember. I couldn't keep track of time. They took us and we ended up in Pohang. They moved us from there to Pohang, and we went down the Central Coast. And from there on, I never knew where I was because there's no freeways, no numbers, no, just names a little town, little board there on the side saying this is Hung Dang Ni or whatever they want to call it. So I did not have a recollection as to where I was. I remember names, but it's hard to keep track if you don't know where you're at. If you know where you're at, an idea where you're at, and you get a map, it shows you can kind of pinpoint your way around there. But in this case, there was no such an animal. And on June 1951, I was wounded and my tank hit a mine and everything went up in smoke. But I fortunately, and so did the other people, survived the explosion. But I ended up in a hospital at Yokosuka. First they took me to battalion headquarters in Korea, and then they put me on a chopper, took me to the Surprise. It was a hospital ship. And they took me on there, and then they flew us into Yokosuka, and I stayed there for a couple of months, and then here I come back again. Everybody say, "Hey, now what? I thought they're going to send you home." Not this guy. I stayed there again, and eventually, in the latter part of we took action in all through the month of all through the year of 51, up until October when I left to come home. And from there on, it was hunky-dory, California, here I come.
My name is Ray Salazar, and I joined the Marine Corps in 1951, thinking that, hey, this is a good time to get the GI Bill. Well, I ended up in San Diego in boot camp, and I was 23 years old, so I was used to the lifestyle of what you might call the athletic style, where you have to work out and got to get in condition, the whole thing. So boot camp to me turned out to be like a fun time. But I had to go through the motions because I was going through boot camp. And there were kids there that were 17 years old, and you are 23 years old. And the first night there at San Diego, we went into this barracks, and all you hear was sobbing all over the place. So I got up and walked out the door into a hallway, and there's a sergeant standing out there, and he yells, "What the hell are you doing out here, Boot? Get your so-and-so back inside." I said, "I'm not going to sit in there and listen to these kids cry." I said, "I didn't come to cry." He says, "You get in there anyway." So I'm there all night long listening to all these poor kids, you know. Well, anyway, after boot camp, I went to infantry training in Camp Pendleton, and I was there for 3 months. We had hand-to-hand fighting and whatever, you know, is necessary for me to learn in the infantry. Then they decided, well, we're going to send you to artillery school, and you're going to MTRACs, landing barges, and you'll fit in over there. So I ended up with artillery. So I did the best I could. I was there a couple of months, and they said, "Well, it's time to go over. You're all ready to go." So we get aboard ship in San Diego, and we're going out the harbor there, and all you could hear is harbor lights. The band's out there playing harbor lights, and there's not a sound on that ship. You could hear a pin drop. That's how silent everything was. And you'd look around, and some guys, the tears were coming down their cheeks, and I'd say, "Well, you know, maybe I should do that. Would that make an impression?" Nobody cares. Anyway, we went beyond the harbor there, and we were out to sea for 17 days, and we hit a hurricane. And it was miserable. We thought we were going to go under. And for 17 days, it took 17 days to get to Japan, and 16 of those days I was seasick. And I'll tell you that's not fun. We went into Sasebo for about 4 hours, liberty, and they gave us all liberty. And we had to be back aboard ship by 12 midnight because we were leaving the next day to Korea. So everything worked out fine. We got aboard ship, and then we headed for Korea. We landed in Satchuri, just south of Wonsan. And It was cold. I mean, it was really cold. We didn't have any Mickey Mouse boots, thermal boots, and we the first thing they did for us, we were ordered to get on these 6x trucks, troop carriers, and they separated everybody, and everybody went to their own outfits. We were there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By 6 o'clock, we were in the front line. That's how fast they moved us. Got assigned to artillery in Korea. I went in at Artillery Valley, and the first thing they told me was, the two of us that were with that battery, the old man told us, says, you guys will get in your bunkers and you'll sleep there tonight. Don't come out. So we got in these bunkers, and the ground is frozen. And the guy says, open your sleeping bags and you can sleep. The water was that high in there, and we were supposed to sleep in there. All of a sudden, about 12 o'clock, 150 guns went off. Boom, 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 all over the place. We flew out the bunker, and this sergeant's standing there and says, get back in there. Get back in there, or I'll send you out there in front of the guns. So we went back in there, and we were soaked. About 7 o'clock in the morning, we hadn't slept any. They called us out, and about that time, they got a call. We want a patrol to go up the mountain. And this sergeant came over to me. He says, you're going. You're the new man, you're going. I am? Yes. He says, yeah. He says, you're elected to go because you're the new man. What did I know about patrols? Nothing. I never patrolled over at Camp Pendleton. So, sure enough, come to find out that the sergeant that appointed me to go on this patrol, his name was Sergeant Henry MacArthur. So the name just sounded good, So anyway, we were on patrol. We were up in the mountains all night, and we heard firing going on. And next morning, we had to kind of sweep up or mop up all the bunkers below us, just in case there might have been some Koreans that might have snuck in or were there hiding. And it was a funny feeling when the sergeant tells you, okay, you can mop up this one, and you stand right there and you say, what? You can clean up this bunker here. And this guy named Joe Correa jumps in. He says, I'll show you, like this. And he takes a rifle and just sprays it. So now, okay, fine. The next one, you've got. And, I lucked out. There was no Koreans in there. But anyway, I was over there about close to 13 months on the front line. And I went home. I came home, and I got assigned to San Diego Marine Corps Recruit Depot. And I did my last 14, 15 months of duty as a drill instructor down in San Diego, better known as a DI, a Marine Corps DI. And I really enjoyed the Marine Corps. I wish sometimes I could have stayed in. But the Marine Corps was starting to change, and a lot of the guys didn't want to stay because the Marine Corps was changing. So a lot of us decided to get out, and I went back to school, and that was it. I was discharged in 1954, and when Vietnam started, they called me and asked me if I was willing to go back in, and I was about ready to go in, and I started reading the paper and listening to the radio and the propaganda that you hear. And I said, "This isn't my war." I said, "Let the kids do the job." So I decided not to go to Vietnam, and that was it for me.
Well, that sounds like you had quite of an experience. Is there any others of you that would like to share an experience you had while you were serving in the service?
I don't know about experiences, but I know why you didn't go to Vietnam, because you knew Andy was there.
I knew he was there.
No, I don't know. People ask me where I was when I was over there. I never had a clue. Didn't know. Didn't go through any villages, any towns. Just go up trails, and it's all we know is at night they would say, "Okay, you go up that hill and dig in," and that's what we did. So I never had a clue where I was. I knew somewhere. When I got hit, we were on an outpost just north or just south, just north of the parallel. And we were just running patrols out from there. Yeah. It was, well, a lot of it is routine stuff. I mean, every day you were out doing something, but it just became a routine thing. And when I got wounded, it was on a patrol that was supposed to be very routine, no problem. And there was only 9 of us on a patrol, and they said, well, with 9, you don't really need a medic with you, but our medic, bless his soul, volunteered to go with us, and it's a good thing he did. Because one of the patrol leader was killed and I was wounded, and they had to carry us out of there. But and that, boy, I'll tell you one thing: I've got more respect for medics than anybody in this world. Those guys reacted, and they never gave a second thought about their own safety. They'd run into anything to pull somebody out. But no, a lot of it, I say, is just it's routine. It's something you get up every morning, and a lot of times you do the same thing over and over, and they move you. You never knew where you were or where you were going. And once in a while we got fed.
I got a funny story if you want to hear it.
Absolutely. Doesn't have to be serious, it can be funny.
We were going between San Diego and Pearl Harbor, and the day out of Pearl, they realized that someone had stolen all the whiskey from the sick bay. So they mustered everybody at quarters, and they took everyone's keys. They thought for sure there was a key to the sick bay, and they didn't find the key. So the next day when we got into Pearl, the skipper went ashore, and the executive officer, who was a shoe salesman in Chicago, when they called him back in the reserve, and there were very few regular Navy aboard. And Angster canceled liberty for everybody. So one of the ensigns went ashore with one of the seamen to get the mail, and they brought a phone back on the to put on the quarterdeck from the pier. And shortly after that, Angster got a phone call and said, "This is Commander so-and-so on the naval base. I want everyone in the Liberty Party put ashore immediately." So he piped on Liberty for everybody, and that's supposed to be ashore. And the next day they find there's no such executive officer on the naval base. And that ship was a lot of fun. You know, not when we were being fired upon, but there was a lot of craziness. So it isn't always seriousness. There was times when people laughed. We were in the Formosa Patrol for about 2 months, and that we operated between Quemoy and Matsu in the mainland. And of course, the Chinese would fire at the islands, and the islands would fire back. And we got caught in a typhoon. And that was the only time in my life that I can remember being scared to death. I really thought that little ship, 300 feet long, was going to go under. We were taking water up on the bridge, taking 45-degree rolls, and we were headed with the storm, which was a bad position to be in, because the waves would come up underneath the destroyer and just put us right up in the air, and the screws were spinning free. And the skipper decided to turn around and go back into the storm, which he should have done to begin with. But they wanted everybody to put life jackets on. And my feeling was, if I have to go in that water, this life jacket's not going to save me. And it was scary for a while. So when my chance came to get out, I got out. They had their chances, them and the Chinese had a chance to kill me. They're not going to get any more.
Sounds like a smart move.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had? Go ahead.
The destroyer I was on was a World War II type.
Mm-hmm.
It had 3 5-inch guns, had some torpedo tubes, had a lot of depth charges for anti-submarine warfare, had 40 millimeter anti-aircraft and 20 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. It was mainly manned by regular Navy people, and when I joined it, I was from the reserve, so I had no previous experience. There was a few reserves, most were regular Navy. As I look back, I really think that that particular ship had a lot of experience, especially in World War II. The captain was an older man, and they must have felt that he was pretty capable and that the ship was, because we were at sea 30 days at a time and had many different experiences. 3 times off the north coast of Korea with Task Force 77. And those were the airplanes that took off from the carriers that did dive bombing and various types of bombing in North Korea to prevent the munitions coming down for the use of their soldiers. So we were preventing that. We also did that in Wonsan Harbor in shore bombardment ourselves, shooting our guns at where they knew there was trainloads of munitions coming down from the north. We also were sent to the Formosa Patrol, which Ron mentioned. We were 30 days at that. At that time, it was thought that the Communist Chinese were going to invade Formosa, which is sometimes called Taiwan, I think, which of course never happened, fortunately. We had a chance to get a liberty in Hong Kong. That was kind of interesting. I was also sent to the first H-bomb test at Anahuac. That was for 3 months in the summer of '52. What they did was they had an H-bomb on a tower, and they had to send an airplane over to drop an A-bomb to explode it. We were there for guarding. And incidentally, a destroyer is 300 feet long, 33 feet wide. The reason it's called a tin can is because the armor is only 3/4 of an inch thick on the center 1/3 where the engine room and boiler room. The aft and the forward part is only 1/2 inch thick. They say you can shoot a .45 pistol through the hull. It was designed for speed, to run with the carriers, be plane guard detail in case one of the planes went in the drink, we'd go after them, which we did several times, especially in Wonsan Harbor. And it was a very famous ship during World War II. It had a big plaque. On one side was a Presidential Unit Citation, and on the other side near the galley, and this is, I think, a little bit of an interesting story, is another plaque telling the story of when a submarine surfaced alongside of the O'Bannon in World War II. It surfaced so close that the 5-inch guns would not bear down, and all these Japanese crewmen are running for their gun. That they have that one gun on a destroyer, getting ready on a submarine, getting ready to try to sink the destroyer. And these guys were there peeling potatoes, and there was 2 of them, and they started grabbing potatoes and throwing them at the Japs as they ran out to man their gun. And they did that just enough so that the ship could sort of back off, and these guys all being distracted. And the other guys on the destroyer were getting their carbines, and they were able to back off enough to bear the 5-inch guns down and blow them out of the water and defend themselves. So they put a plaque up there for that.
Never thought potatoes would protect our
Potatoes
service
are good for more than one.
more than just eating. Sounds like.
Yeah, that was kind of innovative. I guess you do what you have to do when you need to.
That is true.
I was 14 years old when the war started in 1941, and by the time they sent me to Korea and the whole thing took place up there, I turned 22 while I was in Korea. And the only reason I wanted to go in there because my daddy and my two uncles wanted to be in the service. But when they went down to the recruiting station in San Francisco, they wouldn't take them. None of the three. He said, you guys go home and take care of your families and we'll take care of the war on this side. And that always hurt me because my daddy cried for weeks on end. He wanted to go and so my two other uncles. So I wanted to be make up for their inability of joining the service. So just as I was about to turn 18, which is 1947, the war ended, of course, in 1945. So by the time I went into the service in 1950, you know, I'd already had some time, and I turned 22 while I was in Korea. And my daddy wrote me a letter and a telegram, and everybody said thanking me, blah, 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 on and on and on and on and on. And then at times I was even sorry that I joined. But I said, well, I made my daddy happy for this, so that's my gift to my dad. To this day, he always referred to me as his hero. Not that I did anything spectacular, but the fact that while people were leaving here, going back to Canada or wherever they wanted to go, well, I won't say brave enough, just perhaps maybe even dumb enough to join the service while the shooting was gone. Well, and as it was, and on top of that, when I came back from Korea, I got discharged in January '52. And by '53, I went back in because I had a medical discharge when I got back. I went back into the service, and this time, they sent me to boot camp. I'd never been to boot camp. What I learned here at Moffett Field as a reserve. I went to San Diego, and before I knew it, they sent me down to 100 Harrison Street there. But I wanted to go overseas. I didn't want to stay around here. I said, there's too many places to see, too many things to do up there, rather than sit here behind a desk or wherever you're doing. So before I knew it, I wanted to go to Area 14, which is Japan. That's where I wanted to go. And in April of '56, they sent me to Okinawa. From there, I got transferred to Japan, and then I went to Okinawa. And before I knew it, I was on my way to Da Nang. We were getting a lot of equipment coming in from Korea, and they were depositing in Okinawa for repair, refurbishing, if you will, whatever. And of course, all of a sudden, I found myself doing courier duty. I didn't belong to a unit at all. I reported only to two brothers, McMasters and McMasters, both generals. That's what it says. Navarro, you're on your way back to Nam. Where to this time? Da Nang or Wei or wherever they sent me. So I found myself coming and going. And, well, eventually when my time was up, I came home. And then before I knew it, 2 years later, here I go back again. And 2 years were over, here I come back again, back to the States. Then while I was in 29 Palms, they sent me to DI school, drill instructor school. And I felt so good because out of the they were going to bring into San Diego something like 300 future drill instructors, if they pass the training, of course. And I felt pretty good because out of my battalion, there was about 150 or thereabouts. I don't remember. And they made me go to San Diego, and I felt good because I was chosen over all of these guys. And from there on, that was it. I finished my drill instructor course, and I went back to Vietnam again. And I stayed in 67, and then 68 and 69 I came back, Treasure Island, and I was discharged finally in 1971. So it took me pretty well in different places. But I visited everything that I could visit while I was there. I made it a point, as long as I'm here, people pay thousands of dollars, not necessarily to be here in Vietnam, but the beaches in Bali and all of those places up there. I'm going to make the best that I can out of it. And whenever they said, we need one, here I go. And off we would go. Because going to Australia for training or whatever. And I went there with them, and pretty soon Thailand, pretty soon South Vietnam, North Vietnam, you name it, it was all there. So I had a good tour of duty while I was in the service. And I gave 22 years of my life too. But that was it.
Now you were starting to...
Yeah, we were asking if anybody influenced you about joining the service. I guess Andy and I are pretty much the same age. And when I was in high school, we had compulsory ROTC. So, and that was during the heavy part of World War II. And so I got pretty oriented towards the military just from the ROTC experience. Was on a rifle team and was just really pretty gung-ho about the whole thing. Well, I got out of high school in 1947 and went to work, and of course the war was over by that time. And in 1948 they decided they were going to start drafting 19-year-olds again, and I was going to turn 19. So from my ROTC experience, somehow or another, I decided I wasn't too interested in it. Wasn't very interested in the Army, because that was ROTC was totally Army oriented, and for some reason or another, I didn't have any interest in the Navy. So I thought, well, I'll join the Marine Corps. And I thought, well, with all that ROTC experience, you know, that'll be duck soup. The night I hit receiving barracks, I found out a lot different. But I'm happy I went in the Marine Corps, and I'm grateful for the many experiences I had. I still don't know why at 6-by with all of us in that truck this one snowy, bad day, why it didn't go down over this cliff. But the driver lost control of it, and we did a 360-degree spin right there in this very narrow road, and it must have been 500 feet down. If we'd have gone over the cliff, we'd all been killed. But in spite of all that, and like Frank says, when I was over in Korea, I really didn't know where I was. I heard the names of the places, and I was even a surveyor, and so, you know, we were out turning angles and climbing hills and plotting coordinates, and the only thing I really remember is that I was in and around the punch bowl for a while, and I really never knew where that was, but somebody gave me a map of Korea recently, and there it was. And it's way different than I thought I was. So I'm like Frank, I really never knew where we were. Except one day we were out on patrol, and we were going up this hill, following this path, and we took a break, and we were on this little tiny piece of real estate that wasn't any bigger than this circle of chairs. and the guys were all around, and by default, I was leading that patrol and never led a patrol before. And we're taking a break and a breather because it was really steep. And the guy says, "Where are we, Al?" I guess they called me Chris then. Anyway, I got out the map and I did my best in reorienting the map. I said, "We're right here." There was never another question.
We're right here.
So, but I guess one other time, my buddy had the transit set up, and the Chinese were seeing that that was going on, and they knew that once he turned angles, that could mean bad things for them. And they started throwing mortar shells at him. So they hauled the transit down, climb in a bunker, and wait till everything quiets down. He went back out, set it up again, started turning his angles. They started throwing mortar shells in again. And that happened 3 or 4 times, and finally he just says, "Give up, come back at a later time." I guess about 2 weeks later, I was up at that same point, turning angles, and not a thing happened. So I feel fortunate. And the only other thing is that when those guns went off in the middle of the night, it seemed like they'd pick you up off the ground and turn you over and then just drop you off. And so,
Imagine about 150 guns going off at one time.
No.
yeah, it was
Punchbowl was nothing but tubes. Just
those
sticking up like
155s.
that. And every once in a while, just about the time you're relaxing, you know, you're eating your canned beans or something like that, and those guns go off. And the first thing you do is you drop everything, and you're right there at the gun, you know. You got to be at the ready to help. And at the first time, boy, I'll tell you, I think I left my heart inside the bunker. I just running wild out there till somebody stopped me and says, "Hey, get back in the bunker." But you know, it was a good experience. It was a good experience. A lot of us learned a lot, a lesson in life that you know, when we came back, we were different people. We were different people. We were more matured. We didn't do the things that we did before. We were kind of a little more considerate of other people. We got a little wild sometimes, and that's only because you're not over the whole situation, and it takes a while before you get over combat experiences. Even today, once in a while, you know, you kind of look around real quick, and there's nothing there, but you hear something. And I do that. So it's like I said, it's a good experience, and we did learn a lot.
Well, you know, one of the things that is still with me that I see a lot was the fall offensive in '51 when they started. That night,
Yeah.
we were on patrol. We came back off of patrol, and we were they said just pull out in that field and just, you know, get some rest because we're going out in the morning. Well, it just happened we were across the street, right across the road from an aid station, and there was a battery of 105s about a quarter of a mile away, and you couldn't sleep. These guns going off all night long. So I sat there, and I looked across the road and watched this aid station, and I saw guys come in, some walking, some on jeeps, some in an ambulance. And the thing I noticed was the dead that they had brought out. They wrapped them in gray blankets, and they stacked them along the road just like cordwood. And they'd get so many, and a deuce and a half would come up, and they'd load them on. And this went on all night long. And I'd never, ever forgot that. I cannot get it out of here. Every time, a lot of times I just close my eyes and I can still see the light across the road and these bodies just being stacked up. Never goes away.
My experience with an aid station was, I had gone back to an aid station to get some wisdom teeth pulled out because they were giving me a real bad time. So I had to go to the aid station, and from there I was supposed to go back to battalion to a dentist.
One with the pump.
Yeah, one of the few. And stopped at the aid station, and I walked in to this little tent like mesh. And guy comes in with a clipboard, and he said, that one, he's all through. That one, his legs have to go. That one, and they just went right down the line. And I said to myself, I hope I don't get hit in the legs. I hope I don't hit in the arm. I hope I don't get it in the head. Well, who cares about if you get it in the head? Nobody's going to worry about that. But anyway, I got to the aid station. Two corpsmen in there. What's your problem, Marine? I got trouble with my molars. Well, let's take a look. And they said, well, we don't have anything to give you. We don't have any morphine. We don't have anything. And I said, well, they got to come out. He says, they got to come out. So he gives me a little swig of 180.
190.
Or no, 190. He said, take a swig of this. I opened up the cork, and that's all it took. Just open up the cork. And I laid like that, and woke up. And I felt these hollow holes in here, just bleeding all over the place. And he says, you can go back to your outfit now. And I said, how about something for pain? He says, you're a tough Marine. You go ahead. 3 nights I was in the bunker, couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything, couldn't eat or swallow anything. All I kept doing is getting rid of all that blood. But that was a bad experience. That was a real bad experience.
So, were any of you decorated with medals? And if so, what do the medals represent?
No, I just got the Purple Heart. Same as Andy.
Oh, I didn't bring mine.
Okay.
There is a fellow in our group that is not here that received the Bronze Star for whatever. I never did get the details. He was wounded 3 times in one evening, and he received a Bronze Star for something. Maybe Ray knows.
No, I don't have any idea what we're talking about. It could be
Gilbert.
Gilbert.
Yeah, I think he's got, what is it, 2 Purple Hearts?
3
Purple Hearts.
And the Bronze
So,
Star.
and he's wearing a plate in his head,
Yeah.
where part of his head was blown off. And he's a real jolly guy, and he helps a lot of people. He helps a lot of people. He's, you ask him to come over and cut your lawn, and he'll be right over.
Sounds like a very special individual.
In all the parades, and Gilbert has trouble with his leg walking.
Yeah.
And he insists on carrying the American flag in all the parades that we've been in.
Right.
And there are times when we just didn't think he was going to make it to the end, but he hangs right there.
What parades have you been in?
Well, the one, the Veterans Day parade in San Jose, and we used to go up the 4th of July parade up in Redwood City.
Okay.
And but Gilbert always insists to carry the American flag. Yeah.
I'm amazed that in the way people act, there's no patriotism at all. There's a make-believe type of patriotism. They put a flag in their car and they say, I support my troops. And they don't know what the flag's for. They don't know what the flag's really for. Unless you've got a son or a daughter over there. And then you know what it's for. But other people that have never had any experience with combat or even in the service don't really know what those ribbons are for. They just know that there's guys over there fighting a war, and I'm going to support the troops, but they don't really give it a lot of thought. And it's too bad that it has to be that way.
There's a lot of difference in the area for these parades. The Veterans Day Parade in San Jose.
San Jose.
It's a very passive crowd that shows up for that. You go up to Redwood City on the 4th of July, and the people, the whole length of that parade, are 3 and 4 and 5 deep, and they stand up when you go by.
When you go by.
And they applaud. You know, it gives you a really good
It's
feeling.
a small town,
Yeah.
and they appreciate. A bigger town, they're too busy. They're too busy to give you the time of day, and you say good morning to them, and they think you're trying to pick them up.
Yeah.
And that's not right. You go to any other country, you say good morning to somebody, they'll say good morning to you with a smile. Not here.
Yeah. You know, to go back on what influenced you, or do you have any family members that were in the service before? Well, my dad and some uncles were in World War II, but the one that influenced me most was Harry Truman. He sent me this nice letter inviting me for a 21-month tour of duty. He said, just report to the induction center on January 1st, 1951. And how could you turn that down? You know, nah, you can't say no to Harry.
Harry was a good
Harry
guy.
was, yeah.
Yeah. Was signed by Harry Truman.
Harry's, yeah, signed by Harry.
For 3 and he gave me 4.
My brother, when he got to be 18 years old, he wanted to go in the Marine Corps, or 17. He wanted to go in the Marine Corps real bad, you know, and he says, that's the outfit I want to go into. Well, he never got in. The Army drafted him. And then he's over in Italy, and his outfit gets all shot up in Italy, and he's wandering around with his rifle, not knowing which way to turn, you know. So this Japanese guy asked him, he said, where's your outfit, Private? He says, I don't know, I can't find him. He says, come on, we'll take you. So he was with the 442nd group,
The
Japanese group. And he says, man, I never seen, these guys really are real fighters. He said, they're good. And he said, I felt real safe with them, but their casualty percentage was very, very high.
Well, gentlemen, it has been our pleasure here at Gavilan College and Gavilan TV station to have you today. We want to honor you as war heroes, ones that have served your country and us and allowed us to have the freedom that we serve and we have here. It has been very interesting, and we want to thank you for being here and sharing your life and your experiences with us.
Well, just thank you for wanting to listen to us. Not many people do.
I don't want it.
Well,
It's kind of hard to let out, you know, and get into brass tacks. It's you have to be around veterans,
right.
and this is why our breakfast group they get along so well. We don't have any dues. We don't have we don't take roll call or anything like that. And if you want to come to breakfast, fine. If you can't make it, fine. After you miss a couple of times, I might get on the phone and say, are you all right?
Well, this is Emma Harris here at Gavilan College and Gavilan TV station with our war veterans, and we are here to say thank you and goodbye.